Property rights are the foundation of an economy, capitalist or otherwise. That is because you must establish who has the right to use something before that something can be useful to anyone. This is true with factories, intellectual property, aside from pirating of course, and land. Space is no different. No one does anything unless it fits their goals. In economics, we call this rational self-interest, which sometimes makes people think we are talking about selfishness, but we aren't. Rational self-interest simply means that you don't do anything unless you find personal value in it. This explains the behavior of used car salesmen and philanthropists alike. No one is going to colonize space if it isn't in their own self-interest. Even seemingly altruistic people like Elon Musk, who has the extremely noble goal of saving our species by making it multiplanetary, still has self-interest at heart. This is why he put terms about recognizing the right of self-rule for future Martians in the terms of service for Starlink. Article 2 of the Outer Space Treaty says that no celestial body is subject to the appropriation by means of use. Basically, you can't stake a claim by building a base, mining, or using materials, which is silly because what is ownership other than the right to use something? Basically, this is an attempt to prevent countries from annexing parts of the moon, Mars, asteroids, or anything else, and I would argue invalidates the treaty. People will use objects in space, and this is a must unless we are going to become a pathetic species stuck on a single mud ball. Both individual people and countries will completely disregard the Outer Space Treaty once land is occupied. I guarantee you, China isn't going to blink when claiming mineral rights or land. The treaty would also prevent people or groups from forming their own countries, as Elon Musk apparently wants to do. So here's a thought experiment. If a group of people surrender their citizenship in a company that signed the Outer Space Treaty, would they still be bound to it? The real question here is whether you can own property on the moon or Mars, and how property rights would work or develop in space. The short answer is we won't know for certain until someone claims some land, starts mining, and living on the moon or Mars, because at that point, we will see if governments try to enforce the treaty. The long answer is that it is very complex because people are not nations, and many times the laws of a country contradict treaties they signed with other countries. And that is all the Outer Space Treaty is, a treaty. It is not international law. The very idea of international law is silly because there is no higher authority. The UN is not a world government. It is a treaty organization and an international forum. Every time it has tried to function like a governing body, it has led to disaster. And I personally won't take the UN seriously so long as the worst human rights abusers sit on the Human Rights Council. If a country signs a treaty with a foreign nation that says Pepsi is now illegal, but then does not pass an internal law making Pepsi illegal, does not stop the manufacture, sale, and consumption of Pepsi, then that treaty is meaningless. The only real recourse the other country has is to go to war or use political pressure to force that country to change their internal laws. It gets even more complicated. There have been many cases where one part of the government makes a treaty with a foreign power that would implement restrictions on citizens or internal policies that said branch of government has no right to control. If the US signed a treaty with Canada that did away with the First Amendment, that treaty would be wrong, not the right to free speech. The point is that without an enforcement mechanism and the obedience of the citizenry of all nations involved, treaties are meaningless. Now let's throw non-signatory nations into the mix. Ocean-going vessels routinely flag themselves as belonging to nations where they receive port access or tax advantages. Likewise, many companies locate their headquarters in advantageous countries. If a group of Americans wanted to set up a colony on Mars, could they immigrate to Vanuatu, hire a ship, fly to Mars, set up their colony, and declare themselves independent? It seems petty, but this is the sort of situation that could occur if people stuck to the letter of the law when it comes to the Outer Space Treaty. Enforcing the letter of the law is ridiculous, because big nations like the US and China won't follow it. The worst case scenario is where we end up in a rules for thee but not for me situation, where governments openly claim land, essentially annex territory, but private citizens can't own land or set up their own societies. This would become an Earth-based hegemony system with numerous problems, including oppressive surveillance states. This would be increasingly hard to manage and would quickly get out of control with groups attempting to break away and assert their rights and independence. If countries want their colonies to remain nation-bound, they would need to create incentive structures and local governments within existing systems. Essentially, the only way to maintain national cohesion when multi-planetary colonization is involved is if societies become more free. This is one of the many reasons why the development and colonization of space is essential for the survival of freedom. The longer we go without colonizing our solar system and the stars, the harder it will be to maintain our basic freedoms.
Please like and subscribe. My social media links are in the description, as well as links to my books.